Can this $179 pedal replace an entire guitar recording rig that costs more than $3,000? Well, spoiler alert, it can actually get pretty damn close. But don't take my word for it, let's check it out. Oh, and no, this isn't a sponsored video. I've been building up my guitar rig over the last several years now, and overall I have to say that I am pretty happy with it. Now, I'm not a live player. I'm a home studio enthusiast that likes to play riffs and practice and record for fun, and that's what my whole setup is geared towards. But for a while I have been wondering, could I downsize and economize my rig by switching over to a modeler? Maybe something like the Helix HX Stomp. Well, the Pod Express came out recently, and I jumped on it, I placed an order for one, and I decided to go ahead and give it a try. Now, before you mention it, I can't use amp sim software for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but when I plug my guitar direct into my audio interface, or even through a DI box, I have tried that, I get all kinds of noise and interference, and it just sounds like trash whenever I try. I've tried Helix native plugins, I've tried Softtube, Neural DSP. None of it has ever worked right for me. So yeah, with all of that said, let's talk about my guitar rig that I use for playing at home, for practice, and for recording. And this will include all of the costs of the components so that we can compare that later to the price of the Pod Express pedal. Now, my rig starts with a $1,000 plus or minus a few bucks Marshall DSL 40CR tube amplifier. And I have a kind of medium-sized pedal board. The setup starts with a tuner pedal, it's got drive pedals, it's got an EQ and a noise gate pedal, and of course there's effects like chorus, tremolo, delay, reverb, and of course I have a power supply that runs the whole thing. This setup, just for the pedal board, cost me nearly $2,000. I just added it up today before I was working on this video, and I was a little shocked by how much I've spent just on my pedal board. Then of course, I have to include my Torpedo Captor X in this equation because I rely on that heavily for recording my amp, so there's another $600. Grand total, just over $3,500. Then in this hand, we have the $179 Pod Express, which gives me almost exactly the same capabilities as my $3,500 guitar rig. In fact, the only thing that this thing doesn't offer is the 7-band EQ, but the Pod does things like, I don't know, phaser and flanger. This has a looper pedal, and of course it's tiny and battery powered. So I think the fact that this doesn't have a 7-band EQ is offset by those features. But I think for most of you, and of course for me, the most important factor is, how does this thing sound? Now the question is, does the Line 6 HX modeling sound as good as a tube amp? an analog pedal board, and the excellent Captor X IR loader. Well, does it sound as good? No, not really. At least, not in my opinion. But it's not too far off either. And if you factor in the cost differences, $179 to $3,500, it's probably more than good enough for most people. Now, I do personally mostly play pretty high gain stuff, but I'll try to do a series of examples that include some clean tones and some crunch tones as well. And I'll include the use of some different effects, just so we can see how the reverbs and other effects sound. So listen, I am not going to do a full run through of every single feature of this pedal, function, and effect, or all of the tones that this thing can produce. Tons of other channels have already done that. It's kind of boring, and it's just not what I'm interested in doing. But I will give you my opinion and my pros and cons lists of this pedal. Now, first, I have to say it is great value for money, and I would recommend it to just about anyone that has a use case for a modeler like this, strictly because of how inexpensive it is compared to the other similar units that are available on the market. Now, I have to say I was happy with the USB implementation and how easy it was to hook up to my computer. I'm glad that they went with USB-C, and I think that it's really cool that you can record over USB as well. And of course, you do your system updates through that port. Now, it does have a plastic pedal housing, and I've seen a couple of people complain about that. Well, probably more than a couple, just about every review video that I've watched. But my opinion, I have to say that it does feel pretty sturdy, and I like how lightweight it is. So for my uses, mostly being in a home studio setting, I think the build quality is great. Plus, it can optionally be powered by battery, so I can unplug it from my power supply, throw some batteries in it, put some headphones on, and I can play guitar anywhere that I want to with good guitar tones, and that's just awesome. Now, regarding the effects, they sound pretty good, but they are extremely limited, and that quickly becomes a problem. Not having any control over the delay parameters in particular makes those effects difficult to love. The rest of the effects, again, they sound pretty good, but they are also pretty limited. I do love that it has a built-in noise gate, but I hate that I have to hit a combination of the Alt and Tap buttons plus spin a knob to control the gate threshold or a different knob in order to control the gate decay. It's like playing a game of Finger Olympics, and I just don't like it. And unfortunately, you need to play that game to control the amp's master volume control and the presence control. So there's 4 different knobs, and you have to hit Alt tap and one of the knobs, depending on what you're controlling. Like I said, it's annoying to say the least. And it's not even labeled on the front panel of the device that that finger Olympic button combination is how you control those 4 specific parameters. So you have to memorize those actions and you have to remember what each of those knobs does in that scenario. The tuner also kind of sucks, at least for me personally, in the way that I use tuners. Now, I mean, it is functional, don't get me wrong. And it will work for most people, but I jump around tunings a lot. I'll go from E standard to drop D to E flat and drop C sharp, sometimes D standard or drop C. So knowing exactly what note I'm on when I'm trying to tune it without some sort of screen makes it difficult to use, and I definitely prefer my normal tuner pedal, Peterson Strobo Stomp, in lieu of the tuner that's on this thing. But if you just stay in one single tuning all the time and you just want to find out if a string is a little bit sharp or flat, this will work perfectly. It's just not ideal for my personal use case. Now, I have not used some of the features like the looper yet or the additional foot switch hookup, so I can't comment on those functions, but someday I probably will. I'm looking forward to checking them out, and I'm glad that those features are available if I decide I ever need them. Also, I haven't totally figured out why something I've noticed is happening, so I'm not going to go too much into it. I'm not going to dwell on it too hard, but I am getting some weird digital distortion that sounds a bit like clipping sometimes. When I'm playing with higher gain tones and I turn the volume knob up on the side of the unit, even though I'm not clipping my audio interface's inputs, I will hear crackling in my headphones or clipping or like a sputtering sound coming out of the pod. If I back that volume knob on the side of the case down, it will go away. But it's a little bit weird. And again, I'm 100% not clipping my audio interface. And my meters in my DAW don't show anything peaking over 0 dB. In fact, I don't even get close to 0 dB. Usually I'm hitting for like minus 12 or so. But I do hear that distinct digital clipping static when I push the volume output past roughly half with a lot of gain on my tone. So yeah, again, that is a little bit weird. But overall, I have to say that I really like the product, especially I like the price. I think it sounds good enough for the money, and that's not a pejorative. It's not like it sounds bad. People will think that that's what I'm implying. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds good. On top of that, I do think that I will get a lot of use out of it, at least for my used case, because the room where I film videos right here is not the same room that my guitar rig lives in. And bringing this little guy into the room to record stuff is so absurdly easy that I will probably do that whenever I want to make videos using guitar tones. Now, I guess that'll do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting, useful, and entertaining. Thanks again for tuning in and watching. But do me a favor, do the stuff with the like button and the subscribe button, please. You know, push them, click them, smash them, whatever it is you want to do with them. That would help me out a lot, and it would help the success of this channel, and it will help it grow. So I would greatly appreciate it if you would do that. Now, with all of that said, let me say thanks again, and until the next one, bye now.